Welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, and also we're not wizards. Enjoy the show. Bye.
Do you hear that, Benji? You're tricky. He then, obviously, then the next thing we get the announcement for Undaunted, kind of Battle of Britain, and then after that,
never ending.
we're then getting the announcement for Under Orders. So
yeah.
So I mean, this is kind of like I mean, it's a kind of a straight.
You know what it is, and I don't think Trevor and I actually ever told anybody this before, but we actually are both in the basement at the Osprey building, and they don't really let us out.
Exactly.
I was gonna say that it's kind of like you're like Jesse Pinkman in the last of like 4 or 5 episodes of kind of like Breaking Bad, is that you've quite literally been captured, and you're now being forced to work. And that's just a clever background that you've got at the moment, David, isn't it? If you switch that background off, there would be the table would still be there.
It's just brick walls and like a table and scraps of paper, and that's all we have. They bring us food and water once a day.
I mean, that's the truth for why I don't have my camera on, because I don't want you to see the rats and chains in the background. Because
your filter's not working at the moment. I'm gonna do a quick intro. Let's do a quick intro. Yeah, well, I mean, welcome to We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for potentially April. It could be March. I don't know. I'm kind of in one of these things where I've got so much going on, so much I need to plan. Sometimes I need to write things down. I don't want to remain kind of undaunted, but I'm strictly under orders to make sure that I cover several key points when I'm talking to two of these wonderful people. I'm joined by David Bolstered Thompson and Mr. Trevor Battle of Britain Benjamin.
Well done.
And they're going to be leading kind of taking us by the hand through these wonderful kind of streets. Evening, gentlemen. First of all, it's wonderful for us to be here.
Yes,
it has taken emails. Do you know what? See, for a second, I felt I was organising like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of meet up. Do you know that famous meme where it's like, you have my sword, you have my axe, I can't do Thursdays. I felt I was like some kind of visiting. It was some like visiting time, and it was like some kind of riddle where it was like, and you can meet us on Tuesday, but only if the moon is fat, and only when the cow has walked backwards across the field.
Well, Richard,
3
this
times.
is exactly why we designed 2-player games, because getting more than 2 people in a room at the same time is nigh on impossible.
Just absolutely. This is what you want. This is kind of what you This is kind of what you want and what you need. You guys have been busy. And busy's kind of like an understatement. I mean, I don't think there's been a kind of a year. I mean, you're coming up to a next year. Am I right in saying that next year is kind of like your 10th kind of anniversary?
God, I haven't even thought about it.
Because I think it was like was it about 2014 or something like that you kind of, I think the first-ish kind of...
Yeah, I guess it kind of is. I mean, that's when the sort of it all... Oh, my good God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, when Trevor and I first met, that's true.
God, David, that's crazy. That's like, I hadn't even put it together. Happy anniversary, baby.
What do I have to buy? What's the 10-year
What are you
anniversary?
going to get each?
10
What are you going to
years,
get
10
each
years,
other? What are you
hold on.
going to? Is this when you buy each other like a 3-player minimum player game or something like that? So you need to bring kind of somewhere else. Most people when they're on this show, okay, what I do is I say, I'm going to have a look back at the past. I'm going to have a kind of a glance into the present, and then we're going to shoot off into the future. But I'm guessing that one of the questions you're probably like any kind of celebrities when they kind of, if they're a part of film or media or something like that, that one of the questions they always get asked is, well, how did you guys kind of meet? We've established that it's 10 years ago, everybody get over it, okay? They're going to have a nice party. They might even meet again, potentially, I don't know. How do you keep things fresh in a design? Welcome to a relationship. But how do you keep things fresh and spicy in a kind of design relationship? No, this is a serious question because you guys have obviously this has been quite flawless. And you've been working together obviously quite well. We've had Undaunted North Africa, we've had Undaunted Stalingrad, we're now getting Undaunted Battle of Britain. Are you ever going to just do Undaunted Daunted? Is that going to be the last game?
Just Daunted.
Just Daunted, yeah. One thing's interesting too is, so we've been working together for 9 years. The last 4 of those we haven't seen each other at all.
Yeah.
We last saw each other at Spiel 2019, so it's been a while. But I mean, for better or worse, we have a lot of contractual obligations to produce games, right? So when Osprey comes to us and says, "Hey, we need a new Undaunted," it sort of constrains us to some extent. We know we want to do something different and new because we don't want to just kind of tread the same ground over and over. But at least it gives us a good starting point for what the next thing to come is. Trevor and I do a lot of conceptualization, like tossing ideas around. Mm-hmm. And I think we've gotten better in the last few years. It's saying, hey, here's an idea, and we'll think about it, and we can kind of toss an idea out for a bunch of time. Mm-hmm. But that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes we really thrash on things that'll never see the light of day. So,
over to you, Trevor. I mean, does David make you feel kind of valued? I mean, does he lift you up when you needed lifted up? I mean, is he a good? I mean, is he a gentle critic?
No,
when the time
he is. I'll tell you what, though, it's interesting. Like it took a while, but basically we found our flow and our rhythm. But like David, it's so funny. Okay, a couple things to say. First of all, I'm Canadian. Canadians are supposed to be the polite ones. David's American. He's supposed to be all brass and brash and in your face. But like, it's the exact opposite. David is the one who will. It's taken me a while, but David will tell you your idea is terrible using the friendliest possible words, and it took me a long time to learn when David was telling me my ideas were terrible. But he makes me feel valued. We've gotten to the point, where we're like, we have our own roles, but we're constantly, we're good. We're good. I'm just trying to think of some good examples. Like, yeah, but it is really interesting. And like, David has his fair share of stinkers as well. Like, a lot of his ideas are pretty garbage too. And so
I'm glad that we're kind of sharing and we're kind of getting this kind of out in the open because it's a good thing.
We but I think that's to be honest and serious. Like, I think that is one of the most important things you need in a collaborative relationship, right? Is like, you need to get it takes time, but you need to get to that point of honesty where you can just, the relationship and the project you're working on is so much more important than your personal ego around anything, right? And like, no, you shouldn't cling to some idea or something, or get too precious, because most of the stuff's going to end up in the bin, because most ideas are trash, or aren't good, or like they could be good, but there are bad ideas, and then there are ideas which could be good but aren't good in the particular context you're working in, right? And so you just constantly need to be filtering through that, and it's always easier with two people working on it towards the same goal, right?
Do you ever have kind of like throwaway design days? And what I mean by that, and I'll expand on this, is because as somebody who podcasts and does kind of like written stuff and things like that, sometimes I'll have a pile of games behind me. I don't have a pile of games behind me. I've got 2 copies of Alice is Missing. And I've actually also got City of Remnants from Isaac Vega, who's going to be on the show very soon. But sometimes I forget because I'm in a kind of like a review kind of capacity, and I'm kind of like looking for things that, how can I write this? How can I present this on the page? What does this game make me feel? Did I enjoy it? Did it make me angry? Did it make it frustrated? Sometimes I forget that the reason that I got into this in the first place is because I found board games extremely good fun sitting in front of a table. And sometimes what I do is I'll make sure that I will consciously play games, not take any photographs, not write any content, not even post or tweet about what I'm doing for the weekend. Do you guys sometimes just do like a kind of a blowing the dust off kind of, let's just make a game about, let's pretend we're in a fairy cake factory and we're making cakes with different fillings. How would we do this in a 2-player card game? Do you ever kind of do that kind of mucking around just to make sure that fundamentally you are still you're in the business end of it now. You've got contracts and people, obviously wanting you to reach the deadlines. But is it still important to you to make sure that you're realizing what you're creating here is fundamentally fun, meant to be entertainment, fun, enjoyable? And do you make kind of special effort to keep that kind of fun going between the two?
That's a really great question. I've got an answer, but what do you think, Dave? What do you think?
Well, we can get, without naming names and being too specific. We had a relatively recent experience where, so just to be clear, designing is not Trevor or my primary job. We both have day jobs. We both have families with young kids, and so we take it very seriously. I would say it's somewhere in the mixture of a hobby and a second job, right? And so we were in a situation recently where we were working on a project, and the project was just it was work. It was like a job, and we said, like, we can't do this anymore. We have to stop doing this because it's not fun. We're not excited about it. And so we stopped working on that project so that we could get back to the core of making sure that we were looking forward to our sessions where we got together and we're working on design work. But to also answer your question, it's not that often that we have the luxury of being able to get together and just toss around new ideas and hypothesize about what ifs and conceptualize brand new ideas. But every once in a while, we'll have like all the stars will align, and we're not working on a project that needs its quick turnaround, and we can come together and just
it still happens quite regularly where one of us will, in addition to like regularly meeting to talk through and work through games, we're on Facebook Messenger with each other most days, just shooting things back and forth, and it's pretty often. I'd say once every month or two, where one of us would just say like, "Oh, here's an idea for a game," and just throw out an idea for a game. And most of the time, unfortunately, it's like, that's a great idea, and then we either forget about it or we stick it on some, endless list of backlog of ideas of things that we might one day work on. But we still do have, those ideas and discuss them. And occasionally, Like, it will turn into, oh my god, this is such a good idea, we just have to find the time to work on it, right? Like, and I mean, like, General Orders, this new game coming out with Osprey, is a perfect example of that. That wasn't done on commission. That was like David saying, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did a mix-up, a mash-up of a war game and a Euro game and a worker placement game? And then the stars aligned. It was like over Christmas, and we're just like, yeah, okay, let's try to work on this, and it came together ridiculously quickly, and from that from that little process came a game which is now coming out later this year. So it does happen, but not as much as we'd like, I think. And like David said, we do this sometimes and create either a concept for a game or a pitch for a game or actually a fully fledged game, and then try to, but it doesn't end up seeing the light of day, or at least hasn't yet. So it does happen, but it's certainly less frequent than when we were starting, which kind of makes sense, right? Now we've been in the game for a long time, and it's one of these things where would we rather put our time into something that we know will finish and find the light of day, or some more sort of like conceptual thing and that could potentially turn into something not. It's I wish I had more hours in the day to work on game design, but it's just.
Are you quicker then to kind of like announce kind of time of death of games, if you know what I mean, in a design thing? Because again, like from my creative point of view, and more on the kind of the opinion pieces or written stuff, I'll write something and I think I'll have a brilliant hook, and I'll be writing and I'll get 3/4 of it through, and I'll just go, this is actually not going anywhere. This sounds like I am literally a man standing at a bus stop who's got a quarter bottle of whiskey, and I'm shouting at anybody who's passing me by who's going to hear. But with you guys, with your experience, are you a lot quicker to kind of turn around and say, do you know what, we should can this, or we should put it back down, because we've kind of been working on it so long that it's not, it's like repeating a word. Repeatedly until it doesn't make any sense. It's like I've been thrashing through trying to get this mechanic to work, and it's just not working. Let's step away and work on kind of something else.
That's a tough one. certainly at various points in sort of our, I keep saying career, but it's not career, but like in our, we have spent over a year, 12 months, 18 months grinding away on, repeating some word over and over again, and, but it's been a while since we've done that. Now, like David mentioned an example, like there have been projects we've worked on that we've eventually abandoned, but it's not typically now because it's for some other reason. But it's,
to be fair, we don't really have the luxury now, right? So, and what I mean by that is we're usually working on at least one game that's on contract, right? So that was a commission game or something we pitched to guys. And so we're usually we're juggling a couple of things, but we're usually working on at least one thing on contract. And so what that means is we're either working on the thing on contract, or when we're not working on it, we know that we don't have enough time to spend a bunch of time that we're going to ultimately waste on a different. And so we kind of can't invest a bunch of time on something that is not either progressing fastly or on contract, unfortunately.
Like a good just one last example for like a good example of that is David and I we work on different types of games with both together and with other people, right? So like David does a lot of design, like mostly solo design for like war game design. He's been doing some of that work more recently with other people as well. I work with some other people, mostly another British designer, Brett J. Gilbert. We work on different things. And then David and I, overwhelmingly what we do are these sort of crossover, like lighter war games like Undaunted or, like that sort of thing. But Dave and I have, at various points, even quite recently, toyed around with the idea of making games for other types of audiences, right? Like we've had dreams of making games for the sort of more mass market, and we've tried, but with limited success. We haven't really gotten past. We certainly haven't anything published, and we've done some pitching stuff, but it has never really worked out.
Yeah.
And so we had a discussion recently where we're like, look, maybe one day, but it just seems like the effort that we've put into those endeavors have never paid off. So like, let's focus on what we know works for us.
What's surprising to me is you're both saying that this is still part-time.
Yeah.
But I can, I can go to I can go into the Osprey Games site and go, oh look, there's a Thompson Benjamin game. There's another one kind of coming out. And I think that shows to me that there's still a side of people that think that, if your board game gets published, that's it, you can go full time into kind of like board game design. And I think it's just one of these things that's like, I don't think the money is there we're still in a very kind of specialist market. I mean, if you're the guy that's designed Dobble, you're probably just rocking up with the SUV going, all right, kids, kind of like just got my own, with my license plate Dobble 1 and stuff like that. But I think there's some people think you got a successful board game, you've made it. Like, say, Isaac Childress with Frosthaven. If we're going, well, he raised millions of pounds on his last Kickstarter. He must be kind of rolling it. There must be, he's getting gold teeth and everything like that. He's getting himself kind of sorted out. And it's like, no, it's actually diamond teeth because it would be Frosthaven, so it looks like ice. But there you go. But I think he's probably still kind of, all he's doing is he's just making games. I don't think there's like a wad of cash that's sitting there and he's not like Scrooge McDuck or probably Walter White, actually. I think Isaac's kind of got that power where he goes, yeah, give him a couple of paper cuts, will you? But I think the passion must have kept you going. I mean, is there any times have you kind of sat back and went, I need to make a decision here. I'm spending an awful lot of time. And if you've got family, I understand, you're spending an awful lot of time away from your family and stuff like that. You'll be spending time going to cons. You'll be spending time talking to Scottish idiots on podcasts. But that'll be an awful lot of time. Is there a point sometimes you think, oh, well, actually, yeah, I've got games on the shelf here, but, am I close to kind of walking away, or can I say, does it make it easier to maybe draw a line under it and say, right, I did all this is wonderful, I can kind of go away?
So there was a book when I was I grew up on D&D. I grew up on Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a popular Forgotten Realms, if you know it, setting in D&D. And it was an author I read when I first got into it. I was probably 11 or 12 at the time. R.A. Salvatore, and I will always remember this. The books weren't that good, but they were popular. I will always remember this. He was in an interview, and somebody asked him about whether they should become an author, and his reply was, "Well, if you can choose not to write, then you probably shouldn't become an author, right? It's a thing that you just compelled to do." And I don't think so. For me, it's a creative outlet that if I didn't have it, I'm not sure what else I would do. Like, it's this weird sickness where I'll be watching a movie or reading a book or something. I'm like, how would that look in a game? So I don't think I could choose to not do it. And I say that seriously. Like, I'm not sure how I could not work. Yeah.
And what about you, Trevor? Would you?
Yeah, it's certainly similar. Like it's a compulsion's not the right word. Well, maybe it is the right word. Like it's just now so much part of my life that I couldn't imagine not doing it, And like Dave said, it's a creative outlet. It's also like Dave and I are design partners, like quasi business partners, but like he's one of my best friends in the world. And so when we're working together, it's also just it's a way of socializing. It's and it's the same with the other people that I work with and the people that I meet in the industry. Like I have very good sort of social relationships with a lot of them as well. So there is that side of it where it's, ultimately it's like, there are certainly, it's somewhere in the middle, right? Because like there are commitments and, there is a business side to this and like, there are certainly times when I'm grinding out a rule set or editing a document for the 100th time or, balancing some cards or whatever, where it's just like, I'd rather be fishing or whatever. Not really, I don't fish, but like I'm a vegetarian, so but anyway, I'd rather be doing something else, but most of the time, I'm doing it because of that compulsive urge and because I enjoy it, right? Like it's funny because I actually I don't play that many games, not nearly as many as I used to, because designing has taken over the space for that. And I'm sure that's true of lots of designers. I don't, there's nothing special about me in that case, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on that. So there was at one point, so right now my schedule is I wake up every single morning and I work on design work, and then either usually twice a week, Trevor and I get together after work for me. There was a point when I was not doing that. I was working in the evenings. And my wife, and this has been many, many years ago now, my wife was like, you've got to stop working on game stuff in the evenings because you're taking too much time away from the fans. And she wasn't saying it mean, or she just was kind of matter of fact. And so what that basically means is, and she was right. She was absolutely right to say that. And so what that means is, like I said, I get up in the mornings before I go to work and I work on game design. And then 2 or 3 times a week, I'll get together almost always just with Trevor, right? I'm not meeting other people in the afternoons or the evenings usually. And so, but that I gave up game. Like I don't go to game meetings in the evenings like most gamers do, right? I'm a side for design. So I usually have one gaming meetup a month where I actually play games.
But that's to keep it fun, isn't it? It's to make sure you kind of know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but like Trevor was alluding to, like for me, if you said you could play games or make games, I would rather make games. That's the fun, right? So, in the trade-off, the designing, the time to design, for me outweighs the time to get.
Do you feel you're able to react quicker to kind of like changes in kind of popularity and things like that? Because one of the things I know, and one of the reason for this is the number of times I see people who have just got a Kickstarter delivered to them, and they've like, oh man, this is so 2021. So with you obviously being contract with Osprey, do you find there's a quicker turnaround? I mean, if you have like say for instance, let's look at the Battle of Britain, the Undaunted new one. How long was that in terms of turnaround? That once you get all the materials together, that you can then press the button and it's going out there. Is it
So Osprey and Trevor, you can elaborate on this. So Osprey's different than pretty much any other relationship with any other publisher because they are extremely well scheduled and they have a much longer lead time than pretty much any other publisher. And so what that means is we're usually like when Battle of Britain comes out in June, like how long ago did we deliver that? A year and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. A year ago, at least. So we're working on. I mean, we were working on Battle of Britain before Undaunted Reinforcements released. Probably. right?
Wow.
So we're way. I mean, it's long before a game is released. That we're working on the other titles in the series. So, so that's a little bit. It's a little bit different, right? I mean, but like from the design perspective, it's I don't know how long it took us to work on Battle of Britain, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Probably like intensive working. Yeah, probably. Yeah, around half a year probably for most. I mean, it depends, right? Like Stalingrad took us longer because it's a beast and it nearly killed us. So it does depend to some degree, and like we mentioned, the general orders came together quite quickly. But the other interesting thing, of course, is, and this again varies from publisher to publisher, but like, so David sort of alluded to this, like with Osprey, our role is, we have a very good, clearly defined set of responsibilities that we have, right? And so we will do the sort of core design work of the game, provide them with, a rough rule set, the components, like again very ugly looking, and scenarios, like the scenarios work through and things, but then they pick it up and do tons and tons of work, right? Like they put, they do development, so they will in development, when there's meaningless words, but like they will do some further iteration on the gameplay. They'll sort of put it through some paces. Then they will manage all of the art direction. I mean, we feed into that, and like we work directly with Roland, but it's largely sort of us supplying bits of information, and then Osprey manage it with Roland, and they do take my scrappy rules and turn them into something beautiful, and do all the graphic design, and all the production and all and all of that, right? So like that is a long process, and we're involved at various stages, like feeding into bits and sort of checking things over and proofing things, but it's they're largely managing all of that, right?
Are you glad you're not going to Kickstarter then?
Oh.
That you have to avoid that circus.
Well, so Trevor and I have each done different amount, not obviously not with Osprey, but with other publishers. We've each had games that have gone through Kickstarter, crowdfunding, so GameFound or whatever. I will say this. So I basically refuse to be part of a Kickstarter that has Kickstarter extra content during the campaign.
Yes.
Right? Like a gameplay content. So it kind of, I mean, there's always going to be some extra work you have to do that you weren't planning to do or whatever. Right? You can on that. But in terms of like this Kickstarter design gameplay bloat that you see sometimes, I'm not going to be part of that, right? Like, just won't be involved in like that.
I think there's a try to satisfy the kind of the audience kind of thing. I think Kickstarter gets into a dangerous thing that they've kind of given people this impression that developing and designing extra stuff can just be done. Yeah. You know what I mean? You want a 5-player version, there you go. You want a solo version.
It can be done, and it will be done poorly if it's done during the campaign. You know what I mean? Almost always. So.
Yeah. Let's I
mean, I know, Trevor, you
please continue.
I was gonna ask you something.
You hijack that interview, David. You hijack it. There's probably questions you want to ask him in the safety of other people. So go ahead.
I'm David Thompson. I'm the new host of We're Not Wizards, and Richard will be the designer on the next Undaunted. So we're switching roles.
The next Undaunted game is called Sandcastles in the Sand. It's when you have a lovely day out. It's a card game, and let's do this. Okay, let's do this. You're talking design game. Let's design a game right now. Let's call it Sandcastles in the Sand. It's the local sandcastle competition. Okay, it is a card game It is a resource management game where you are basically collecting, you basically collect little resources, little yellow meeples of various different sizes and shapes, okay? And the idea is that you're building yourself a sandcastle. Now, you've got the two options. You can build the sandcastle with the slightly wetter sand, but what that does mean is that you have got three different things you've got to be aware of, right? You're a small child, so you've got a tiredness scale. So you can only go back and forward to the water and dig up the sand before you get tired and you have to stop, okay? Then you've got a distance from the sea scale, which is if you build the sandcastle closer to the sea, you'll have obviously better access to the wetter sand, which means you get a more solid structure, but it means that as the day goes on, there's a chance you're going to get wash coming up and it's going to start washing and eroding the sandcastle away. Okay, and then you've got obviously the other thing that you can do, which is you've got a shop which sells different types of buckets. The tech tree basically, you have your standard bucket, and then what you can do is based on as you go, you can based on how magnificent your structure is and how solid your structure is. And everything like that. You can go for solid and boring, which means at the end of the day, there's a chance that your structure's still going to be there once the water comes in. Or you can go for more exciting, which means you can get coin, which means you can go up to the local beach shop, which you can buy the more expensive buckets, which allow you to build more exciting sand castles.
Ship it.
There you go.
It's done.
It's done. Undaunted castles in the sand. Coming to Osprey Games.
Yeah, well, it'll be 2027 now because that's the next time they've got a slot in there, probably, because they're in future land.
I'll send a passive aggressive email to Benji. He'll sort me out. No, that's not going to work. No. So there you go. So that's your next. So that's 20. Now we're looking for 2028 because we got done obviously the first one. But no. Let's talk. Okay, so here's it. Right, David, you're going to tell me about Battle of Britain.
All right, it's on you, David.
Trevor, I want you to tell me about Under Orders.
Okay. You start, David. Go on, Battle of Britain.
Battle of Britain.
Okay, Battle of Britain. Here we go.
Yeah.
So Battle. I mean, obviously, I kind of mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. So, Battle of Britain is the 5th Undaunted title. Right, so Normandy obviously was base game. Right, comes out. It's the base game. There's asymmetry in the scenario design and in like the way in which you build your decks, like your starting decks and stuff. But the actual decks themselves, like if you were to lay out all the cards, is symmetric. And so we followed that up with North Africa, which was the super asymmetric version, different scale. Reinforcements had solo and team play, obviously, and a whole bunch more content. And then Stalingrad was this big beast, right? This legacy thing. And so, like I mentioned before, since this is not our job, it's important for us, for me and Trevor, that every Undaunted game feels different, both because we want to give players something new to experience, but because we would otherwise go insane. Like if all we were doing was reskinning Undaunted Normandy over and over and over again, like it wouldn't be fun for us, right? So there has to be some sort of design challenge and interest and whatever. And so so when we set out to do Undaunted Battle of Britain, it was like, okay, let's do something very different, like very, very different. And so the entire design experience for us for Battle of Britain was very much one of, okay, how far can we push the system, but it still needs to have the Undaunted DNA at the heart, right? And so if you ask somebody that's played a bunch of Undaunted, what is the DNA of Undaunted? It's the deck building, obviously, right? The deck building system. It's the super streamlined combat, right? It's those sorts of things that you can't get away from. So it was always a matter of how can we make this very streamlined aerial combat World War II game, but keeping that DNA. And so I hope, obviously people will let us know if we completely screwed it up, but I think I think we did okay.
We've done an excellent job. No.
We've done an amazing job.
just-
And anybody
listen,
This
that
isn't
compromises wrong.
this isn't
wise.
Benji's listening. We've done a good job. It's good. It's good. That's good.
Yeah,
David's
it's
crying
fun.
on camera just now.
So I mean, it changes. It changes like from a conveyance perspective. It looks different, right? Like it's in hexes instead of offset squares, which might sound negligent to most people, but I mean, it looks different. It has spacing, right, which is different. It has directional attacks and all this stuff. So it has a lot of uniqueness to it. But at the same time, it will feel when people are playing it and they're attacking a Stuka from behind with a Spitfire that come behind it, and you're doing all this aerial combat, it's still going to feel like the Undaunted system. And so that's awesome. Obviously we really enjoyed how do we model a bomber versus a hurricane or whatever. So that was an interesting sort of experience for us to go through. And then the other thing that we did, and I don't know how much we want to go into this. I'll defer to Trevor maybe.
No, keep going. We're allowed. I think we're pretty much allowed to talk openly about Bob now.
We can talk about whatever we want.
This is it.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? In Undaunted and all the other prior Undaunteds, Fog of War played heavily, right? So, one core thing about Undaunted is all you really need at the end of the day are scouts and riflemen. Send the scouts out; they have to go first. They scout everything out, and then the riflemen come behind them and control. Right? And everything else in the entire game is about enabling those two units to exist. Well, I mean, the idea of scouting is it plays a very important role because it's what dictates the amount of Fog of War that gets into your deck. You deal with Fog of War and deck efficiency and all of that. Well, it doesn't make a ton of sense, right, to have this concept of scouting and Fog of War and stuff in aerial combat. And so we thought, well, we still like the idea of these cards, right, the Fog of War cards and their impact to your deck. How do we model that in aerial combat? And just so everybody's tracking, in Undaunted Battle of Britain, the scale that we're at with the fighter aircraft is, a plane is essentially a unit from Undaunted. So one plane has the pilot in it, and it'll have multiple cards controlling it. So I guess the closest approximation is Undaunted North Africa. But the other thing we wanted to do is we really wanted you to feel like the main pilot and his wingman, there's some sort of bond between them, right? Something tying them together, and that sense of working together or that cohesion was at the core of the game. And so what we introduced was this concept of discord, right, between the pilot and his wingman. So you can do whatever you want. You can go around the board and fly away from each other and go off on your own and all of that. But when you start operating independently like that, what planes do, they'll start taking these discord cards, which work just like right.
Oh,
and
right.
So the actual gameplay impact, what it encourages you to do is actually coordinate the actions like the real world in the real world they would between the two pilots. And so I think that there's tons, like I said, it's tons of other stuff with numbers and barrage balloons and AAA guns and all this other stuff that players will experience. But I think at the end of the day, that's the thing that will probably stand for players about managing their deck.
Are people allowed to run around with their arms out at the sides, going? No.
It's forbidden. That's the first line in the rule book. You are no role playing or fun or shenanigans will be had whilst playing Undaunted Battle of Britain. Yeah.
There you go. Serious faces.
True.
You have to put on your King George kind of voice, don't you? You kind of have to. And in this time, that's it. In this time of great conflict, we come together as a people as we face the might and evil of Germany. But there you go. Trevor, I would like to
general
know
orders
a little bit more.
I'm not allowed to say
orders.
too much. This is definitely so. David,
Do you know, the way I view this, right? The way I view this is like, okay, is like, this is like the REM kind of album, right? So you had Undaunted Normandy, which is like Out of Time.
Yeah.
And then you're moving into kind of like Stalingrad in North Africa, which is kind of like your Automatic for the People. And then the Battle of Britain, that's kind of like changing things up. So that's like Monster.
But Automatic for the People is their best album by far. So I don't want to feel you're basically telling us we've peaked. So I don't like this analogy.
I'd like to point that Green says hello. Right. First of all, with your little Automatic for the People's the best REM album. Okay, and if we're going down that line, then obviously, oh hello, look, there's Life's Rich Pageant as well.
All right,
let's not go there. Let's not go there, Mr. Benjamin. This was all going so well. I thought my analogy was okay. It was a change in direction. Monster was a much more rockier sound than what had come before with Automatic for the People. And what David was saying is that there's a distinct kind of change up
for sure.
Stalingrad and Battle. So there you go.
It's perfect.
I'm not saying you peaked.
All right. No, your analogy is good. It is good. So
thank you.
Just to quickly go back to Battle of Britain, which I almost can't say Battle of Britain because we've called it Bob for now 3 years. It's Undaunted Bob. It's Bob. So
Undaunted Bob. Wow.
Like it is. I mean, Stalingrad is the most comprehensive, intense version of Undaunted yet. But Bob is certainly, Battle of Britain is certainly the most, I would say, and I don't think David would disagree. It's the most different, right? Like it pushes furthest away. Like all the things that David mentioned, plus just, like the objectives of the missions are all like, blow up a bunch of planes or bomb these targets. Like there's no concept of control. There's not like it's just different, right? The facing, the line of sight, like all that stuff. Okay, so all that's true. Right, General Orders. I'm not allowed to say too much about General Orders. It is let me just think of how do we so. Like I said, it's very much it's its own beast, right? Like it's World War II because David has a disease and he cannot come up with a conception of a game which does not, in one way or another, involve World War II.
I'm going to ask about this in a second, but that's a whole can of annelids. It's a whole tin of worms.
It's
extra cheese on the pizza.
But it's a different scale. Again, it's a, sort of a more operational scale, right? And it's more abs. I don't want to go down that line. It is.
Yes.
It's more. It abstracts a lot more than Undaunted does, and it's funny because, of course, if you talk to a lot of people that say, "Whoa, Undaunted isn't a war game; it abstracts too much." So it certainly abstracts more than even on.
It's how
they
do. Say it.
They do.
You got to put in voices of people.
No. We love it. We love it. Everyone. No, but I mean.
I thought Undaunted sucked.
No. I mean, some people do, and that's fine.
I want some donuts.
But like, it's funny because you've got a clan of people, and I agree with both of them. They're saying it's not Undaunted isn't a war game, and other people saying it's not a deck building game, and I think both those camps are correct. But at the same time, it is also a war game and a deck building. So anyway, but that's beside the point. We're talking about General Orders. So General Orders is a World War II themed game. It's sort of that operational level. What that means is you've got, you're pushing much, larger groups of units or troops, whatever, across the map. Sort of
Are you going to get in trouble if you
No.
say too much?
Well, I mean, I won't say too much
sure?
because I know what has been said, and so I know it will be fine. And what the
Because I could just read the press release and just like pretend to be you.
No. I will be
What he said.
and what's the sort of, what was the conception or the hook for it, which we mentioned earlier, was like, oh, let's take the worker placement, right? This like well-loved hobby games, Euro game, hobby game mechanic, and mash it up with war gaming, right? War theme. And and interesting, I'm sure when the game comes out, there'll be people who are saying it's not a war game, and there'll be people saying it's not a worker placement game. And but I think certainly that was the origin of it, right? Was the merging of those two things, and you feel do you feel like you're doing something different than a sort of traditional worker placement game? You feel some of that core tension of a worker placement game, right? Where, there's shared spaces that we can't, and that we're sort of competing over, and it's all about timing, right? Like, when do I choose to take this action? I want to do everything, but I want to wait to see what, and do it later, but if I don't do it now, I might not get the opportunity. So it has that sort of core tension to it. But of course, thematically, the workers in this case are, sort of your commanders under you as the general. And the types of actions you are taking are related to, bashing it out on a map. And so some of these actions are performed directly on the map. So like, if I can place one of my workers, commanders, into a space and sort of advance some of my troops into there, and that instantly means that you can't, on that same round, advance into that space, right? So there's that sort of worker placer tension there. There's also actions on the map that are associated with particular spaces, like, this space might have an airfield, this space might have a, like an artillery gun. So if I place there, I can take the particular special action associated with that. And then go ahead.
Are you excited about it then? I mean, you sound kind of like you literally want to tell me.
Well, no, it's
every part of the game. I mean, it's like,
I know, like, we're both, Dave and I are both parents. I don't know. Do you have any kids? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not, you love all your children equally, but, General Order's like, I really, really like it. Like, it's of the games, there aren't, it's tricky. Like, I really enjoy playing it. Like, for me, it's like, it's super quick to set up. It's fast. It's like 30 minutes, and it's crunchy. But it's easy. It's also something like, I love simplicity, sort of, in rules and elegance in rules. And like, it's, it's easy to learn. It's fast to play. Like, I love it. It's good. So yeah, I am excited, and I can't. We can talk about. I mean, I think we can talk about quite a bit about it. I mean, I'm really, really happy with it.
When's it coming out? When's it going to be available in general kind of release?
October.
Comes out in October, right? Yeah.
Wow.
October, but I know that I think the plan right now is to preview it at Gen Con Spiel.
Yep.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. So it'll be at both of those. I do want to just I just wanted to quickly add to what Trevor was saying. Like, I don't know if anybody will be interested in this or not, but one thing that we did when we were, and this is really unusual for me, is it was important to me during the design process that it felt like a worker placement. Like, I don't know why Like it was more about the design challenge of designing a worker placement war game, right? And it was important to me that we always stayed true to the sort of ethos or whatever of a worker placement. And so there were constantly times we would entertain ideas, and we would say, no, we don't want to do that. But or at least I would constantly say, okay, but is this if we make this change, does it push it away from being a worker placement? And so I know that sounds silly, but it was just important to me during the design that it felt that way. And then I'll echo too what Trevor said. Like of all the games I've worked on, maybe War Chest I would put it at the same level because I'm biased because I play with my kids so much. But if you were just to say, hey, you can throw down one of your games and play it right now, it would be General Orders for sure.
Wow.
And it's because it gives me when I actually play proper games, the kind of games I love are the kind of games like 13 Days and Watergate, games that are super short, simple rules that have a lot of depth, and there's like incredible tension throughout the entire game. And I think this game delivers. And so, I really enjoy that.
This just makes me really excited. I like the idea of you guys working on something kind of new is exciting enough, but the idea of you kind of almost being pushed out of a comfort zone, and because I've no doubt there's some way you could have reworked the Undaunted system into something else, and you could just be producing kind of Undaunted forever kind of thing,
right?
Until you end up like REM. And you retire. But in all seriousness, if you're really, really excited about this, then, and it's kind of put a fire, because if it puts a new fire or makes it more intense again, it gets you thinking. I always like to see that. I always appreciate that. I always like to see somebody kind of getting more excited about something else they're doing, something new. Because I know that it's always the same. It's like you can do the same thing again and again and again, and you know that you're going to get good results, and you know that everybody's going to be going, this is amazing. But it must have been like a leap of faith from both of you to kind of go, let's do something completely kind of different, staying within a kind of a similar theme, but let's kind of get it on a different thing. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to see kind of how it looks, how it plays, and stuff like that. I'll be asking Benji very, very nicely. Benji, he doesn't. Yeah, we'll see. To wrap things up, because I'm aware I did say it was a particular, and I'm aware that you're obviously busy, and I am draining. Thanks for denying that, guys. If
you're lovely, Richard, you're lovely.
If you've wasted it. If you had, right, here's a kind of a final question, and it's not, because you can go down do you think people should be playing World War II games and conflict games and having entertainment of them? The idea is, yes, because we need to remind people that things like World War II existed, because at the moment in Australia they've got Nazis walking in the streets. So yes, it's worthwhile kind of reminding people what happened. So there you go. So that's that drawn under, right? Okay, there you go. Honest, and you can either agree or disagree. These are not the views of either Trevor or David. But the view I'd like to ask for you is, you work together as a team, and you obviously work together very, very well. If you had to work with a different designer, and you're not allowed to say David Turtsey, because it's my ongoing mission to wind that man up to the moon and back, if there's another designer that you would be able to work with, who would that be? If you weren't working with each other, is there somebody else out there that you would like to design a game with? And I shall put that to David first of all, if I can.
So I work with a lot of other people besides, like Trevor mentioned this before, right? Trevor works with Brett, and I work with a lot of other people.
Yeah.
We both have worked recently with a mutual partner, but meaning like not Trevor, not somebody I've already worked with.
Not Trevor. There's a Trevor free zone.
Yeah.
A halo of Trevorless.
Oh, this is really tough. I would probably say so.
It's not David Turtz either. You're not allowed to say David Turtz.
Yeah. So this is, man, I don't know. So you can tell me if this is a cheat or not, because I have a couple of favorite designers.
Yeah.
I really, really liked Martin Wallace. I really liked Paolo Mori. But Paolo and I are kind of starting to work on something. So I don't know if that's cheating.
Well, there you go. I have your wish is granted.
So So I would say that he would have been my first choice, but we're kind of starting to maybe work on something together.
Well, then your life is complete. You're like Kane in Kung Fu. You can walk onto the next village and solve their problems. and moving on to Trevor, who's going to say David Turtz just to wind me up.
You know what? Yes. I'm going to say a funny answer. So, okay, so yeah, like David said, I work with David and like this David Thompson, and I work with Brett J. Gilbert. Like, and it's probably equal, like in terms of the amount of time I spend with either of them. And I'm gonna say something silly. So just going all the way back to the beginning, the key issue here is time, right? Like I wish I had more time to work on games. And if I did, I would spend more time working with David and more time working with Brett. But there's also some other sort of early designers or potentially up-and-coming designers around the Cambridge area that I meet with regularly for play test sessions, right, where like they play test games I'm working on, they're working on some games, and there's a couple of them who are really, really good, and I would love to work with games with them, just because they're so, I can see the potential and they're so good, and we're friends, and so what I would love is to have more time in my weeks so that I could start designing games with them, like properly, like co-designing games with them. So that's my answer. So people I know in and around Cambridge and the UK who I'm not going to pick one specifically because I would feel mean, but I have one in mind, and so I would pick them. So I wouldn't pick, and it's not like I have any, like I would also be very happy to be able to work with, like Paolo, for example. Like Reiner Knizia is like, I'm a huge Reiner Knizia fanboy. Like I love his games, probably more than. Like, my favorite game is not a Reiner Knizia game, but if I just look through his canon of 800 games, like, I love a huge proportion of them. But, realistically, if I had more time in the week and I wasn't working with David or with Brett, then I would want to work with one of the local Cambridge folk. There you go. It's a boring answer, but it's the truth.
That's not that. It's not boring. It's not. It's a politician's answer. It's not answering anything at all. It's just squirting around and it's fine. It's no. Part of it's because, but part of it is about wanting to give. Like I feel like I've been doing this for 10 years, and I want to give back as well, right? Yeah,
and like
exactly.
help some people who I think I could help them with their games and get them, into a shape where they're sort of publishable. But just the reality is I just don't have the time in the week. So I think that would be something that I would do, and I would, I think I would, yeah. So there you go.
No, I'm the same. I mean, if I had enough time, then I'd be saying to people, look, do you want to learn how to be really annoying on a podcast as well? Then I can show you how to do that. But if I did that, then I wouldn't be able to be annoying on a podcast. So I'd want more time. Then I could show people how to do it, which would be cool. Okay, last question. What's your favourite game at the moment? What's putting those britches on fire, Mr. Benjamin?
Oh, It's always a tricky one to answer. I'm really boring. So the games, and I always no, it is a tricky. Like, okay, I mean, I'll give the quick cop out answer and say there is no perfect game because it depends on who I'm with, and the groups of people I'm with, who I'm playing with. So that's a cop out answer. In terms of, I'm just having a look around to see what, like, I'm still loving, Just One. I still play that all the time, and I still play The Mind all the time. So those are probably, and I've been playing quite a bit of Quirkle lately. Still loving that. So I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the funny thing is when it comes to playing games rather than making games, like I try to play some new hot games, just to see what's going on in the industry. But like most of the time, I'm going to want to play a game that I know I love. And that's, and it's a relatively small number, but anyway, so there you go. I'll list just those ones. What about you, David?
And David, what's making you giggle and smile and flick your hair and he's had a haircut.
I will. Okay, so I'll blow through a couple real quick, and then I'll give you my selfish.
Yes.
So I'm both myself and my kids are super excited about the Adventures of Robin Hood expansion that's about to come out. I guess it's out in some places. I don't know. It's about to come out in the U.S. So that game is, if you haven't played it, amazing. So that's and then my daughter. So I've kind of lost my 14-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son. They used to play board games with me. My 9-year-old son, even was big into skirmish games, has kind of become not as much into gaming anymore. But my 12-year-old daughter is still all in. And so her current passion is probably Final Girl. So we played through all of season 1 of Final Girl. And we've got season 2 on the way. So like all of season 2. So we play it co-op, right? It's a solitaire game, but we play it co-op. So those are my super quick answers. Now my selfish answers, if it's just me playing with my buddies that once a month that I actually get to play games I want to play. 2 games that have been standouts for me recently. Votes for Women by Tori Brown, published by Fort Circle. It's about women's suffrage in the U.S. Fantastic game.
I've just got it. I've just had it. I've just got it. I'm really, really excited to get it to the table.
So it's amazing. The gameplay, I would say, is really good. The production is off the charts amazing. And I refuse to play a 2-player game because I refuse to play the opposition or play with anybody playing the opposition. So thank God there's a solo and a co-op version. Daughter and I play together. So it's awesome. Highly recommended. And then there's a game called Land and Freedom. It's about the Spanish Civil War. It's a print-on-demand game through Blue Panther, who does like Hollandspiel stuff. But Blue Panther is both the printer and the publisher. It's about the Spanish Civil War, which I know is a super niche topic. It's a 3-player. It's really a 3-player game. Everybody's playing against Franco, and so you take on the role of either the anarchists, the moderates, or the communists. And so it's semi-co-op. So that you're all trying to beat Franco, but you're also trying to do the best. And it does semi-co-op, and I'm not a big fan of semi-co-ops. It does semi-co-op in the best way I've probably ever seen. Super elegant, really, really interesting card-driven game. So, yeah, I don't know what Blue Panther's shipping overseas is and that kind of stuff. So it's print on demand. It's the designer's first game, so the rulebook's a little rough around the edges, but he's super responsive and really good game.
No, we'll have a check, and at the very least, we'll put the links in the show notes as well. And the final. If people have listened along tonight and they've went, couldn't someone have warned those lovely guys what they were going to be letting themselves in for by guesting on the show. Yes, they can. You could have, if you get a time machine and you travel back in time, and you could send messages to both David and Trevor on the internet to warn them just to continue to kind of say, no, we're busy. But if people listen along tonight and they went, yeah, that was all right, I like that. Where do you exist on the internet webs if they want to find you? Trevor, where do you exist on the internet web?
On the internet, it's true. I am on the Twitters at Trevor and Benjamin, and then Board Game Geek as well. And so I've got, so feel free to sort of reach out either via Twitters or on Board Game Geek. And you can see, like, there's, I've got a designer page there which shows all my games and is, it's got links to them all and links to David and whatnot. So there you go. And the Board Game Geek or Twitter, that's pretty much all where the only places I exist on the inner tubes.
There you go. And Mr. Thompson. I almost called you Mr. T. But
Mr. T.
That would have been
I
wrong.
pity the fool.
I ain't getting no plane, sucker. Where do you... Wow. I'm going to hell. Where do you exist on the internet webs?
Okay, so same places as Trevor. Twitter, it's at Jack Thompson, and you can find me on Board Game Geek. Just look up one of my games and you can email me or...
Cool. Okay. And we will put all the links plus the links that Benji... I wonder what Benji looks like. I really wonder. I really should go on like LinkedIn or something and find out what Benji looks like and find out if he looks like what I think he looks like. But that would probably ruin... Probably there goes another dream. And we'll put them on the show notes so that we've got notes to show if you've listened along to tonight. And I mean, medals for you if you have. And you want to keep an eye on what we are up to, just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us in all the wonderful internet type places with like sparkly faces and no traces of anything else. And we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and we've got our blog, which is we're not wizards tabletop.com, and we've got our podcast, which is we're not wizards.com, and we're all over the place basically. And if you've liked what you've listened to tonight, then please go to your podcast catcher of choice and drop us a subscription or even drop us a rating. And if you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, it'd be nice to get a rating or a review, but don't give us 10 stars because it makes me big-headed. And I'm shallow and self-centered enough. But don't give us 1 star because I potentially might cry. Give me something in the middle, like a 5.
Oh, you got a 6. At least a 6.
It's
You're
average.
at least worthy of a 6.
No, it's out. Trevor!
Trevor, he missed the whole
Apple
thing.
Podcast is out of 5.
Come on, Trevor.
Every single time.
He missed
I mean, I know
joke.
you probably don't understand, but at the same time, you should know how Apple Podcasts work. But don't give us 0 stars because I'll make me cry. Give me something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average and we're just a little bit
I
average.
see what
but
you've
the
done there. I
people
see
who
what you've
have
done
not
there.
been average
Apologies.
tonight
Apologies.
are the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic until he tripped up at the very end, sliding on some kind of level 6 banana. I give you David Thompson and Trevor. Oh, it was all going so well, Benjamin. Thank you very, very much for guesting,
thank
guys.
you. It was
I
great
really,
fun.
really appreciate
Great fun.
your time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, this is
Wonderful. And there's only one more thing to do, is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, gentlemen?
No.
David?
I might be a wizard.
Oh, right. Okay, that's it. And it's and then goodbye. So it's a goodbye from David, and it's a goodbye from Trevor, and most of all, before I flip the table, it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful. You're under general orders to go and check out Battle of Britain.
Is that sixes on a D10?
There's no point. There's like you're digging away, like it's like digging away with your hand. Do you know what you're like? Do you know what you're trying to do? It's like you're trying to empty the sea with a bucket that you're using for a sandcastle. Undaunted, sandcastles in the sand, coming to you 2027. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.